The courtroom was quiet enough to hear the cuffs rattle. An old black Marine sat at the defense table, wrists bruised, eyes steady, while three suburban kids whispered behind their lawyer and called it fear. Outside, cameras called it justice. But 12 minutes from that moment, a helicopter would land on Broad Street. A 4-star general would step out with a briefcase and a 50-year-old secret the government buried. To keep people like him invisible. This isn't just a story about a wrongful arrest. It's about what happens when truth shows up wearing medals the country forgot to honor. And that's where it began. One man, one diner, and one lie that would shake an entire city. He wasn't chasing trouble that morning. Trouble came dressed in privilege and pointed fingers. They saw an old Marine with dark skin and steady hands and decided fear was easier than respect. By the time the cops showed up, the story had already been written. He was the villain. They were the victims. But the thing about stories built on lies, sooner or later the truth walks in. Sometimes wearing a uniform, sometimes flying in on a helicopter. The gavel struck once, echoing like a rifle shot through the courtroom. Every sound vanished. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to freeze in midair. 66-year-old Marcus Hale sat straight, wrists locked in handcuffs, his gaze fixed on the flag behind the judge's bench. Outside, chants rippled through the concrete halls. "Free Hale! Justice for veterans!" The crowd's voices mixed with sirens, with news cameras rolling like vultures circling a wounded animal. 12 minutes from now, a voice said somewhere inside his head, a helicopter will land on Broad Street. A 4-star general will walk through those doors with the truth they buried for 50 years. But right now, none of that mattered. What mattered was that the system he'd believed in all his life had just branded him a criminal. 3 weeks earlier, long before the cameras, the chants, and the cuffs, Marcus Hale was just a man, trying to enjoy a quiet morning at Harper's Diner. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and fried bacon, the kind of place that hadn't changed since 1972. Marcus sat in his usual booth near the window, posture as crisp as the pressed shirt beneath his museum jacket. The sky outside still held the blue tint of dawn. His fingers wrapped around a mug of black coffee while he read the Columbus Dispatch, scanning local headlines with the calm precision of a man who'd once surveyed battlefields through a rifle scope. The door chimed. 3 kids stumbled in, white, loud, reeking of last night's alcohol. Chase Whitaker led the way, all swagger and entitlement in a gray hoodie that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly pension check. Behind him trailed Nolan Price and Evan Mercer, both dragging the smell of weed and bad decisions. Chase glanced around, his voice loud enough for the whole diner. Pitch plur first. "Look at Grandpa over there, camping on a single cup like he pays rent." Nolan snickered. "Bet he's here to warm up before the shelter opens." Evan lifted his phone. "Content, boys." Marcus didn't even sigh. He folded the paper carefully, the way you might fold a flag, and looked up. "Morning," he said evenly. "People are trying to wake up, not watch a show. Mind keeping it down?" That should have been the end of it, but pride has its own triggers. Chase's face flushed. He smirked, pretending calm while his voice rose. "You threatening me, old man?" From behind the counter, Teresa Mendez froze mid-pour. "He asked you to lower your voice," she said gently. That's it. But the damage was done. The spark had found the fuse. Chase's grin vanished as he stepped back, theatrically pulling out his phone. "Yeah? Let's see what the cops think about some ex-Marine acting hostile." His voice shifted into fake panic. "Help! There's a dangerous black man at Harper's Diner. He's military. Looks like he's got something under his jacket." Marcus blinked once. He'd heard that tone before. In jungles, not diners. 4 minutes later, Two police cruisers screeched to a stop outside. Sirens died, doors slammed. Sergeant Brian Kincaid entered first, hand already on his holster. Rookie Officer Dana Ruiz followed, eyes wide and uncertain. "That's him," Chase said, pointing with exaggerated fear. "He threatened us. Said he knew ways to make people disappear." Marcus kept his hands visible on the table. "Officer, I think there's been—" "Hands where I can see them," Kincaid barked. "Stand up. Turn around." Marcus rose slowly. "I'm happy to cooperate." "Save it for the judge." The cuffs bit into his skin. Teresa's voice broke across the room. "He didn't do anything. I heard the whole thing. Those boys came in drunk." Kincaid shot her a glare. "Ma'am, step back." The door closed behind Marcus as the other patrons stared, silent and guilty. His museum badge slipped from his pocket, clattering onto the tile beside his folded newspaper. Teresa picked it up with trembling fingers. The badge read, "Columbus Museum of History, Marcus Hale, Custodial Staff." She whispered to herself, "He teaches civics to my grandson." They booked him before noon. Wallet, $28, ring, 43 years of marriage. One photo, his daughter Alicia on her nursing graduation day. His Purple Heart recorded as decorative pin. By the 6 o'clock news, his mugshot was already on TV. "Veteran menaces teens at breakfast spot." The anchor's voice was honey sweet, the footage cold. They ran clips of Vietnam firefights beneath the headline, "Is PTSD a ticking time bomb?" Alicia saw it while changing shifts at the ER. She froze mid-chart, her heart dropping through the floor. That night, Marcus sat across from his public defender, Naomi Keller, in a small interview room that smelled like bleach and defeat. She was young, tired, clutching a stack of files that looked far too thin. "They've got 3 witness statements," she said, flipping pages. "All consistent." "Consistency's easy when you practice your lie," Marcus replied. She sighed. "I believe you, Mr. Hale, but belief isn't evidence." He smiled faintly. "Funny. I used to teach my students that truth was the foundation of justice. Guess I left that out of the syllabus." Naomi's voice softened. "Bail's 60,000. Can your family—" He shook his head. "My daughter's a nurse. That's 6 years of her life savings." Naomi looked down. "I'll do what I can." Outside the county jail, rain began to fall. Inside, Marcus pressed his palms against the cold metal table, eyes on the reflection of the flickering fluorescent light. The system doesn't need to lie to destroy you, he thought. It just needs to believe someone else faster. By the following morning, the story had grown teeth. Talk radio called him a veteran ticking time bomb. Local politicians promised to protect our youth. Harper's Diner scrubbed its social media clean. Marcus stayed silent during arraignment. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and recycled air. When Judge Harold Whitmore read the charges, terroristic threatening, disorderly conduct, Marcus only nodded once. Naomi leaned toward him. "Trials in 21 days. I'll try to get continuance." He kept his eyes forward. "Don't try. Do." The judge's gavel struck again. Outside, Alicia pressed a hand to her mouth as cameras swarmed. Protesters had already chosen sides, half shouting, "Free Hale," half chanting, "Protect our kids." The rain picked up, washing chalk messages off the courthouse steps. Inside the holding cell, Marcus sat alone, back against the wall, whispering a line he hadn't spoken since Vietnam. This isn't a trial about what happened in that diner. It's about who America chooses to believe. He closed his eyes. The faint sound of helicopters in the distance mixed with thunder. Somewhere, 12 minutes into the future, the world was already turning toward him again, and this time it would have to listen. The thunder faded into the whir of courthouse air vents. Reporters stretched their mics like fishing poles. Someone shoved a phone inches from Alicia's face and asked how it felt to be the daughter of a violent veteran. She stared past the lens, jaw locked. because her father had taught her how to breathe through chaos. Slow in, steady out, count to 4, don't blink first. She didn't blink. Inside, Marcus kept that same stillness, the kind that made people assign motives to silence. He sat beside Naomi Keller at counsel table while the bailiff called potential jurors into Judge Whitmore's courtroom. Tuesday morning, sharp suits, travel mugs, commuter hair. The judge surveyed the room from the high bench like a man timing a machine. Efficient docket, no detours, no clutter. Voir dire began with easy questions: jobs, marriages, true crime podcasts. Then came the tripwires: family and law enforcement, who knew a veteran, who believed social media exaggerated everything. Naomi rose to explore bias delicately, a dancer stepping between lasers. "Has anyone here formed an opinion based on the news coverage?" she asked. A woman in a red blazer lifted a hand. "I saw the story on Channel 6. They said the teens were terrified." "Of my client," Naomi said, level. "Do you think that story gives you a fixed view?" The woman hesitated. "Maybe. I mean, combat people, sometimes they have episodes." Naomi pressed gently. "Do you think military service makes a person more likely to threaten unarmed teenagers at a diner?" "Objection," DA Lauren Keating cut in. "Perfectly pleasant, perfectly lethal. We're not trying society." "Sustained," Judge Whitmore said without looking up. "Counsel, move along." Naomi turned to a man with an overnight security badge, eyes rimmed with fatigue. "Sir, you work nights. Can you be fair and alert during a daytime trial?" He nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." The panel shifted. A Latina woman near the back studied her hands. Suburban men smirked in unison when Marcus's name came up. Polite nods hid something colder. When Naomi tried to probe whether race might influence perceptions of Marcus's tone or posture, Whitmore's gavel tapped the bench. "We're not litigating society," he repeated. By noon, the panel was set. 10 white jurors, 1 Latina, 1 black, the night shift guard. It felt less like selection than filtration. People who wanted to talk about fairness had been thanked and sent back to their jobs. People who wanted quick answers remained. As they broke for lunch, Keating paused near the defense table. "Ms. Keller, if your client is interested in a plea, the window is small." Naomi's eyes flicked to Marcus. He offered the slightest smile, measured, unreadable. "We'll be in touch," Naomi said. In the hallway, the air smelled of coffee and disinfectant. Reporters sat cross-legged, carving the day into clickable plot points. On a flat screen, Channel 13 ran a graphic: "Old Warriors, New Threat." A former ADA said words like combat conditioning and reversion under stress. The lower third asked, "Could PTSD make veterans dangerous?" The anchor nodded with practiced compassion, the kind you wear when you've already picked a side. Naomi set 2 waters on a bench, motioned for Marcus to sit. He didn't. He stood by a narrow window, watching rain bead down the glass, his reflection faint and doubled. "I filed a motion," she said, opening a folder, "to admit your service record, the Purple Heart, the Silver Star recommendation, your clean post-service life, the civics tutoring, the re-entry GED volunteers. It's character, yes, but it's also context. You want them to see me as a whole person." "Yes, to counter this trained lethality narrative. The jury needs all of you, not the version inside that graphic package." 15 minutes later, Judge Whitmore denied the motion. "Irrelevant to the present charges, we're not here to decorate the wall with medals." Keating thanked the court sweetly. And somehow, in a single ruling, the state could invoke military training as capacity for harm, while the defense was barred from naming the dignity of a life lived after the war, like letting someone say a man owns a gun, but banning any mention that he's a police officer. Jury sworn. Openings began. Keating stepped into the well with a warm face and a living room voice. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is simple. 3 young men went to breakfast. They encountered a man trained in violence who used that training to terrify them. This is not about blaming veterans. This is about holding a dangerous individual accountable. She gestured toward Chase, Nolan, Evan. Suburban armor, navy blazers, pearl studs. They will tell you what he said. You'll hear how he flexed his hands and stared like he was picking targets. She glanced at Marcus. You'll see how calm he is now, controlled. That's not peace, that's calculation. Naomi rose with a single legal pad and a cheap, leaky pen. Mr. Hale is 66, a retired Marine and museum custodian. He asked for quiet at a diner. No threats, no weapons, no movement from his seat. You'll hear from a witness who heard him say please. You'll see body cam that doesn't square with the story you were told, and you'll see the state try to make silence look like violence. No one clapped. Courts don't clap for underdogs who might lose. The state called Chase Whitaker. He walked to the stand like a stage built by a PR consultant, tie slightly loose for vulnerability, shoulders rounded for boyishness. He dabbed his eyes before tears formed. He stared at us, Chase said tight, like he was calculating. He said we needed to learn respect. He said he knew ways to make us disappear. He flexed his fingers, too theatrical to be accidental. Objection, Naomi began. Overruled, Whitmore said, almost bored. Nolan followed, rehearsed to a shine. He bragged about his military background, said cops couldn't protect us if he decided we needed a lesson. Evan echoed the script, voice cracking without permission. He moved like he was picking targets. The body cam would later show no such movement. Then Sergeant Brian Kincaid, uniform squared, jaw set. Keating walked him through his report. Agitated, evasive, obsessed with the word respect. For officer safety, we restrained him. Naomi approached for cross. Sergeant, did your body camera capture the initial interaction? It buffered. We have partial. And Officer Ruiz's camera? Partial. Isn't it true Mr. Hale remained seated, hands visible, until ordered to stand? He was non-compliant in tone. Define non-compliant in tone. Objection. Sustained. Officer Dana Ruiz followed, 18 months on the force. Do you recall Mr. Hale making any threats? A flicker toward Kincaid. He used the word respect in a way that felt threatening. Naomi repeated softly, in a way that felt. The words hung. The jurors stared. The judge looked at the clock. Teresa Mendez came last for the day, apron folded in her bag, cheeks flushed with indignation and fear. Naomi guided her through the morning, coffee, boys, noise, the ask. Teresa said, please, the way Marcus had, soft, firm, at once. He never left his seat, Teresa said. He said, mind keeping it down? That's all. Keating's Cross smiled. You're fond of Mr. Hale, aren't you? I'm fond of peace and decent manners. Are you a U.S. citizen? I was born in El Paso. The seed was planted anyway. By recess, Naomi looked like a boxer who'd gone 10 rounds with a granite wall. In the vending alcove is 2 stale honey buns, a Diet Coke, last quarter's gone. Alicia arrived on a 15-minute break. They offered a misdemeanor plea, Naomi said softly. Time served, probation. You'd go home Friday. What would I have to say? Marcus asked. That you caused fear, that your words could reasonably be interpreted as a threat. He weighed the words like ammunition. So I'd have to say I frightened them. Yes. Even though I didn't. She nodded, apologetic. It's the safe play. The judge allowed capacity, using your training as a factor, and refused a lesser included. It's not good. Alicia squeezed his hand. He turned, eyes warm and steady. I taught the Bill of Rights in a church basement on Tuesdays for 12 years. If I say I did something I didn't, what do they learn from me then? Day 2 bled into day 3. The news milked the narrative, veteran unpredictability. A morning show set a psychologist in front of jungle footage to ask whether old trauma could erupt in a diner like a dormant volcano. He hadn't met Marcus and never would. An anonymous voicemail told the line cook, Arturo Pacheco, "Immigration's watching the courthouse." He texted Teresa, "I can't risk my kids. He didn't show." On the 4th morning, Naomi argued again for a curative instruction. Don't equate service with danger. If the state can say trained lethality, the defense must show service as context. At minimum, instruct that capacity intent. Denied, Whitmore said. The jury will consider the totality. Keating smiled, without her eyes. Closings hit like weather. Keating spoke nearly an hour. Measured voice, soft eyes, framing everything as protection. He is calm now because he's in control, she said. Do not mistake calm for kindness. He stared like a hunter stares at deer. If not for quick action, we might be here discussing something far worse. She left the sentence unfinished, dark with implication. Naomi had 37 pages of notes and a heart beating in her throat. She stood with none of Keating's stagecraft. She stood like someone who'd learned to keep standing. My client is 66. He mops floors in a museum at night and tutors GED students in civics. He asked for quiet. He never left his seat until ordered. He never raised his voice. Teresa told you that plainly. The body cam you were allowed to see shows open palms, not fists. The state wants calm to equal calculation, medals to equal menace, discipline to equal danger. They want a sniper, where there was a neighbor who likes his coffee black. The law says, sure, beyond a reasonable doubt. Not fear beyond a reasonable doubt. Not headlines beyond a reasonable doubt. When you deliberate, take Mr. Hale's silence seriously, not as threat, but as the truth of a man who doesn't bully, who doesn't beg for pity, who trusts 12 neighbors to see him clearly. The judge's instructions were a thicket. Consider totality. You may weigh training in assessing capacity to carry out a threat. He did not remind them that training once served them, that calm can be a virtue. The absence did the same job. The jury filed out, faces shut like doors. Marcus sat perfectly still, watched Alicia's knuckles blanch. Naomi stared at the ceiling to keep from crying. Keating whispered to an aide. Kincaid smiled at a camera he pretended not to see. Teresa stood in the back, smelling like coffee instead of court. 1 hour, then 40 minutes, long enough to pick a 4-person, take a pulse, turn nervous glances into consensus. Notifications pinged like a weather alert. The gallery filled. The judge took the bench. The jury filed in. Madam 4-person, Whitmore said. A woman in a pink blouse stood, verdict forms trembling. On count 1, terroristic threatening in the 2nd degree, guilty. It wasn't a word so much as a hammer. Alicia's lungs forgot how to work. Teresa flinched like glass had shattered. Naomi closed her eyes. On count 2, disorderly conduct, guilty. No one clapped. No one cheered. The room made a sound like air leaving a building. A bailiff stepped behind Marcus. The cuffs clicked tight again. Sharp punctuation on a sentence he hadn't written. He didn't look at the jurors. He looked at Alicia. Let the corners of his mouth lift a fraction. I'm still here. Sentencing 1 week from today. We are adjourned. The gavel fell. The gavel echoed. The room stirred. And beyond the walls, beyond the cameras, beyond the rain-slicked steps where chalk words washed into the street, rotor blades thudded a slow, patient rhythm against the sky. Somewhere a general opened a briefcase. Somewhere a journalist hit publish on a story her editor didn't want. Somewhere a rookie rehearsed the truth, trying to remember the sound of her own voice. But for now, in this courtroom, a verdict had fixed a lie into law. and Marcus Hale, calm, unbroken, stood as the lie tried to shape itself into the rest of his life. He straightened his shoulders, like always. He breathed in, he breathed out. And as the bailiff steered him toward the side door, past jurors who could not meet his eyes, he said the quietest thing a man can say when the world decides what he is. I won't confess to your story. The door shut behind him. The dull, padded thud of institutional wood. The crowd outside roared for the first cameras to emerge. Alicia stood alone half a second longer than any daughter should, then turned toward the exit where they'd take him downstairs and away. Rain hammered the courthouse glass. Inside the judge's chambers, a clock ticked with the relief of a schedule on time. Down the corridor, Naomi pressed her palms to a cinder block wall, promising she would not break where he had not broken. In the stairwell, Teresa whispered a prayer in 2 languages, because some names deserve double the strength. When the side door opened onto the loading zone, the air smelled like wet asphalt and sirens. The cuffs were cold. The sky was the color of steel, and the helicopter, far off, grew louder. The ride from the courthouse to Marion Correctional felt like a tunnel made of rain. Alicia kept pace alongside the transport van until a deputy eased her back with 2 fingers and a practiced, gentle, "Ma'am." She mouthed, "I love you," through the glass. Marcus nodded once, just as he had on her first day of kindergarten when she wouldn't let go of his leg. Then the gate swallowed him, and the van's taillights blinked out. Like eyes closing, intake ran on rails. Strip, squat, cough, shower. A yellow brick of soap that smelled like a hospital and a tire factory had a baby. A nurse rattled questions in a voice that said she'd heard every version of every pain. Any tattoos? No. Drug use? No. Suicide ideation? He held her gaze. No. She looked away first. They photographed his face beneath a flickering bar light and turned him into a number, 884173. His Purple Heart pin made the inventory sheet as decorative object. The wedding ring Evelyn had slipped on his finger in 78 went into a zippered pouch. The plastic seal popped like a knuckle when they locked it. A CO wrote, "Property bag, Hale M," in blue marker, and never looked at him at all. Cell Block C, Tier 2, a sergeant announced, sliding paper across the counter. Follow the yellow line. Don't talk, don't stop. The cell was a narrow frame of cinder block, a slit window, a steel sink that coughed and wheezed before it gave water. A man about the age Alicia's boyfriends used to be, wide shoulders, buzzed hair, looked up from the bottom bunk. "You the new roommate?" he asked, like asking if the mail had come. "Seems that way," Marcus said, setting the rolled mattress on the top rack. "Name's Darius Quinn." A study guarded curiosity. "What you in for, Pops?" Marcus tucked sheet corners just so, hospital neat. "Asked 3 kids to keep it down at a diner. They said they were terrified. A jury believed them." He didn't have to say the rest. Darius huffed a laugh that wasn't funny. "Yeah, that's how the volume works in here too. You whisper, they hear a scream." They passed the first evening in a fragile truce, 2 men sharing 8 by 12 feet of air, learning choreography. Who uses the sink first? Which step squeaks? How to move when the door opens so toes don't get crushed. The unit TV played a game show. A CO named Hobbs, pale as chalk and just as friendly, patrolled the tier, baton tapping his palm like a metronome. Marcus lay on the top bunk and watched shadows tilt across the ceiling. He'd learned in the jungle to measure time by changes in light, by the chorus of insects. In here, light didn't move, so he listened for the prison's breath, the distant clang of the yard gate, the hiss of steam pipes, the cough of a man who'd smoked for 40 years and couldn't afford to stop. "Hey," Darius said from the bottom bunk low, You really a Marine? I was. You kill a lot of people? Silence stretched. I did my job, Marcus said quietly, and I came home and tried to teach other people to do theirs. My uncle was Army, Vietnam. He never talked, just looked at the wall like it had secrets. It does, Marcus said, and closed his eyes. Morning count, chow line, eggs that had never met a chicken, coffee that learned bitterness as a first language. A rumor, quick as cologne, moved cell to cell. That old man on C2, sniper. Decorations, GED teacher, doesn't bow his head, doesn't raise his voice. Men who lived by pecking order pressed their palms to an invisible fence and backed up, unsure if it was electric. By day 3, Darius stopped calling him Pops. Mr. Hale, then just Mr. H. By day 4, 3 men, Darius, a quiet older lifer, Omari Bell, and a skinny kid, Tyrell Shaw, with a baby girl tattoo, found the little round table in the day room as if gravity nudged them there. You still teach? Tyrell asked. Every chance I get, Marcus said. He tore a legal pad into quarters, handed out stubby pencils. We start with commas and the 14th Amendment. They both save lives. Darius smirked. Commas? Put one in the wrong place. Somebody gets convicted. Put one right. Somebody goes home. They met each morning after count. 1 hour, sometimes 2, when COs forgot to notice. Marcus wrote sentences on the backs of grievance forms, used the dayroom TV to explain how narrative works, who holds the mic, who edits the footage, who gets the headline. They diagrammed reasonable doubt until Tyrell could recite it like scripture. Omari, who had read more than most English majors, slipped Marcus battered paperbacks in exchange for a promise to argue about Baldwin later. Mail call, a trickle, then a flood. Envelopes in 10 fonts, VFW posts, Marine Corps League chapters, church basements where people remembered being told this country was theirs because they bled for it. A corporal from Fallujah wrote 5 pages about a judge misreading calm as coldness. A woman in Des Moines sent 3 $10 Starbucks cards. For your daughter, nurses need coffee. My son's Navy, we see you. One letter in perfect cursive said simply, Brother, we got your 6. Another, Alicia at graduation in blue scrubs, grin loud as a bell. On the back, I'm using my vacation days to fight you home. Don't you dare fold on me. Outside, Alicia had already moved. Second shift at the hospital, 3 hours of sleep a night. She sold the Honda she loved and the dining room table she didn't. When not triaging chest pains, she filled out retainer paperwork on a metal chair outside an appellate lawyer's office. Martin Ellison, ex-JAG, 20 years, looked like a priest who'd traded the collar for a law license. He listened more than he talked. Your father's trial was a mess, he said after the transcripts. Voir dire strangled bias inquiry. Service record excluded while trained lethality admitted. Capacity treated like intent. Witness intimidation unremedied. I see at least 4 reversible errors, maybe 6. So we can fix it? Alicia asked, using the tone you save for doctors you need to believe. We can file a notice of appeal, we can argue, we can push. Appeals move slow. He held her eyes, refusing to sell hope wholesale. But clocks run. We'll be the ones winding this one. Across from the courthouse, Leah Park of the Dispatch stared at a paragraph 3 times and still didn't like it. The editor wanted something softer, emotion from the teens' families. She couldn't write it. She pulled public records until her laptop fan sounded like a hairdryer. 2 minors in possession on Chase Whitaker. Diversion completed on a 3rd offense. Nolan caught cheating on a take-home. Evan's name, always following, never leading. She FOIA'd body cam. First transfer lost. Second started exactly when cuffs were already on. Ruiz's cam arrived with buffering error, and 12 more seconds than Kincaid's. A black man, palms open, fingers spread, eyes on the table, not advancing, not towering, not flexing, simply breathing. She watched that 12-second loop until it burned her eyelids. The maintenance log Teresa had slipped her, stamped by Whitaker Security LLC. Front door camera offline for maintenance, dated the night before the diner incident. Public contracts, city approvals. Grant Whitaker, Chase's father, smiling from a chamber flyer. The editor said, "We're not touching that yet." Leah built a Substack in 20 minutes. White background, black text, no ads. Headline, "What the diner camera didn't see because it was turned off." Publish. The first 1,000 reads came from Twitter cops and trial junkies. The next 10,000 from veterans groups and moms who believe showing up matters. The chorus, "This don't smell right, show the whole tape. Who turned off the camera?" Inside Marion, the Substack link traveled as rumor, then as a printout, smuggled to the rec yard. C.O. Hobbs plucked it from Omari's hand and curled his lip. Journalists. He dropped the sheet like trash and slid his baton until it clacked against Marcus's knuckles. Semper Fi, huh? You planning to teach the whole block how to cry? Darius tensed, fists forming. Marcus pressed 2 fingers to the table. Stay. He met Hobbs's eyes. Planning to teach reading so they can read the rules they're supposed to. Follow. Hobbs smiled without warmth, swept an elbow, pencils, grievance forms, Omari's paperback scattered. Class dismissed. Tyrell bent to gather pencils like teeth. We'll start again tomorrow, he said. Too bright for this room. Marcus smiled, because you always reward the right sentence. Letters kept coming. American Legion, Zanesville. We fly a POW MIA flag, adding your name to next month's prayer list. A high school girl. My teacher said don't trust everything on TV. I didn't anyway. A man writing from another prison. They got me this way too. Keep your sight picture steady, old head. Signed JT with a hawk drawn in the corner. Visiting room, vending machine pizza, bleach that had given up. Alicia squeezed his knee once. Quick. I hired an appeals guy, she said. Ex-JAG. Reads like a cop, writes like a judge, says the record's dirty as a kitchen sponge. Marcus smiled. You selling the car you love to pay him? Too late. Keys already in somebody else's hand. Kept the lanyard so I can remember I'm reckless. He laughed softly, the sound of a window opening an inch. How's work? People still bleed. I still stop it. She swallowed. I'm not going to stop. Even if you tell me to sit, I won't. I wouldn't waste breath, he said. You got your mother's spine. That evening, Leah's phone buzzed. Masked address. Subject. You're missing the 1973 file. Inside, start with Firebase Finch, then look for Quiet Storm. Attachment, after action report, D, classified, teeth of black redactions. Another, Pentagon memo, an office name out of textbooks. She skimmed, 26 MAR 73, Cambodia border, recon pinned, casualties mounting, Marine sniper, call sign Sable 2, held perimeter 6 hours, 38 survivors, recommendation, Medal of Honor. Corporal Marcus Hale. Then the line that tasted like rust. Awarding MOH to Negro enlisted will complicate discipline in transition. Period. Her chest went tight. Next line, recommend downgrade to Navy Cross or delay action until further review. There was no Navy Cross in Marcus's record. Delay had become burial. She replied, coffee, you pick the place, recorder if you want or not. Across town, D.A. Lauren Keating faced flags and jawlines. We respect our veterans, she intoned, but service does not excuse threatening behavior. We will protect Franklin County. She didn't look at the camera for body cam buffering, didn't look for witness intimidation. She smiled for a third question she'd planted herself. Officer Dana Ruiz sat in her Corolla, staring at the steering wheel like it held answers. Open hands. I'm not looking for trouble. Kincaid writing his report before her cam docked. First loyalty, truth. Second, your partner. Today, those weren't the same. She called her mother, let it ring once, hung up. Drove home at 10 and 2 because sometimes you need to pretend control is real. Back in C2, the literacy circle bent over the 14th Amendment. Tyrell traced equal with an eraser. Feels like a word they say at school assemblies. Feels fake. It's a promise, Marcus said. A bad promise is still a promise, which means it can be enforced. How? We in here? Darius asked. Somebody out there reads it and decides not to be afraid, Marcus said. That's a start. Somebody like your reporter friend? Omari asked. She's not my friend, Marcus said. She's a person who likes sunlight. The dayroom TV broke to breaking news with TV timing, an anchor's serious setting, an explosive blog post, a declassified memo, then a sentence that snapped heads up. Sources tell the dispatch a retired 4-star general may file an affidavit in support of Hale's appeal. Hobbs slapped the wall switch, killed the sound. Recreation's over. Cells. Lights out comes faster when hope turns a day loud. Darius snored, soft. Marcus watched the blue rectangle of night, thought of a ridgeline, a radio slick with sweat, a voice that called him Sable 2. Then sun when the impossible needed doing. 3:11 a.m., Leah's phone chimed, VA Canteen, Broad and 5th, no cameras, 0900, postscript, bring the memo, we'll make it official. Leah printed 2 copies, slid one in her boot because superstition is a journalist's second language. She wrote Alicia and Ellison an encrypted note, he exists, then walked into a sunrise that had the audacity to look beautiful. Morning count. Hale, legal, an envelope by its corner like it could bite, Ellison's stamp, a paperclip bent and rebent. Inside, notice of appeal, filed, clocked, official, and a printout of Leah's piece with a taped note. This next part will move fast. Be ready. Beneath it, in smaller, neater hand, tell him I was there. Tell him I was 22, useless, and terrified. And he wasn't. NP. A tremor pulled through him that wasn't age or shrapnel. He folded the paper, slid it into the pocket of the only shirt he was allowed to own. He set the appeal on the dayroom table like a map. Darius traced the letters, careful. Tyrell leaned in. Omari smiled half an inch. Looks like a lot of commas, Omari said. Every one of them is a life raft, Marcus replied. VA Canteen, corner booth, back to the wall, silver hair clipped neat, a windbreaker zipped just enough, eyes that counted exits without moving. General Pierce? Ms. Park. He slid a folder across, the after-action report, fewer black bars, the Medal of Honor recommendation, typed, yellowed, signed, the memo that used a slur like it could be a category. He tapped it once. This is the Arat, he said. We told ourselves the war broke us. We were already cracked. We used the war to justify the break. Why now? Why me? Leah asked. Because your story made a noise I couldn't ignore. Because I owe a man my life. Because I retired. And the only things that scare me now are my wife's driving and my grandkids' tuition. Because I'm ashamed. She let the words sit, shame, clean for once. Will you testify? I'll land a helicopter on Broad Street if I have to. I'll carry the briefcase myself. I'll read these words into the record with every camera on my face. But call Ellison and Ms. Hale first. They get the first look, not your subscribers. And Ms. Park, don't make me a hero. I'm late. Heroes are on time. Marion. An alarm blared. Pores tightened. COs moved with the body language of permission withheld. Darius looked up, a question he didn't say. Stand up, hands visible. Count the steps of the man in a hurry so you don't get stepped on. The PA. Count complete. Return to normal operations. Normal operations meant 20 men sat down and pretended their hearts hadn't sprinted. After dinner, Hobbs lingered at the cell door, smirked at Baldwin. "What's on the syllabus, Professor?" "Baldwin, he makes people careful." "Careful gets you hurt." "Careless gets you dead," Marcus said, not unkind. Hobbs tapped the book to the floor and walked on. Lights out. "You think this judge will listen to your general?" Darius asked in the dark. "Men like that make other men listen," Marcus said. "Sometimes the wrong men. Sometimes, the right day." "You think he'll come for you?" A long beat. "I think a helicopter is coming," he said finally. "I don't know if it's coming in time." He dreamed of rotor wash and rice paddies and a young lieutenant whose voice was a boy trying not to be heard. A radio that crackled, then cleared. The sentence he'd said into a microphone shaped like a throat. "I can hold them if you pull back slow." Morning came. Light not blue, but a hard, clear white that made dust look like a choice. A CO slid paper under the door before count. Emergency motion. For evidentiary hearing, newly discovered evidence and Brady violations. Names below: Martin Ellison, counsel of record, and handwritten in careful block letters as if printers couldn't be trusted: Nathaniel H. Pierce, General, returning. United States Marine Corps, by affidavit to follow. Darius read the top line out loud, slow. Tyrell whistled. Omari smiled with his eyes. "Time to iron your khakis," Darius said, half a joke, half a prayer. Marcus folded the notice into quarters and slipped it beside Leah's printout, beside a note from a man who owed him a life and had finally remembered the debt. He stood when the door opened. He straightened his back, because some things are free. And beyond the walls, beyond the parking lot, beyond the courthouse that had made a monster out of a man who likes quiet. A particular percussion began to thump against the morning, steady, patient, getting louder. The thump started as a rumor in the air, more feeling than sound, then settled into a rhythm that made people look up. On C2, men drifted toward the windows like sunflowers turning toward a light they couldn't quite see. Darius glanced at Marcus with a grin he tried to smother and failed. "Told you," he whispered. "Iron the khakis." "Count, gentlemen," a CO snapped, but even he cut his eyes toward the glass. The prison had a way of shrinking the sky. The noise made it big again. They didn't tell Marcus anything new that morning. They never did. They cuffed him more carefully than usual, wrists, then a chain looped high and neat, and walked him toward a room painted the same as every other room. A phone waited on the table, its cord spiraled tight like a coiled snake. The CO left the door open and stood at the frame, hands on his belt, posture set to board. The line clicked, and Ellison's voice came through, clean and steady like water from a cold tap. "Good morning, Mr. Hale." "Counselor." "Your hearing set for noon. Judge Whitmore denied the DA's motion to quash at 7:18. The court will hear us on newly discovered evidence and Brady issues. We will present General Pierce if the court allows live testimony." "That the helicopter?" "That's the helicopter." For the first time, Marcus heard pride thread the lawyer's baritone. "Ms. Park and Ms. Hale are en route. Officer Ruiz has retained private counsel and will supplement her statement. We're also filing an affidavit from Mr. Mercer today." "Evan," Marcus said softly. "Yes, he's a boy and over his head. He can help pull you out of this water he helped fill." "What do you need from me?" "Same thing you've given everyone since this started: truth and calm." "Those I got," Marcus said. "The calm is rented. Truth I own." Across town, Leah stood on the State House lawn and tilted her face toward the rotor wash as the black and olive bird kissed the morning like a promise. State troopers held a polite circle around the landing zone, hands light on batons, eyes scanning for chaos that wasn't there. When the skids touched, the pilot idled the blades but kept them ticking, a metronome beating time for what happens next. The door slid back, and General Nathaniel Pierce stepped out with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Dark suit, sharp enough to cut paper, the kind of tie you buy once and never replace. Leah had seen the clip in the VA canteen, steady grip, plain talk, and he looked the same in the wind. A man who no longer needed theater, who still understood how theater works. A TV anchor shoved a mic like a fastball. "General, are you saying the county framed a decorated veteran?" Pierce didn't break stride. "I'm saying facts matter." He nodded at the courthouse. "I'll give mine to the judge." Alicia waited at the bottom of the steps, a paper folder clutched like a life vest. She wanted to run and didn't. She'd learned to save her sprint for when it counts. Pierce altered course by inches, arriving at her shoulder without making it a scene. "Ms. Hale, I'm sorry I'm late." "You're right on time," she said, voice shaking and then steadying. "Thank you for all of this." He softened around the eyes. "I'm not doing you a favor. I'm paying a debt." Inside a borrowed conference room that smelled faintly of the last deposition's coffee, a strategy map sprawled across a whiteboard in Ellison's blocky hand. Pierce, MOH packet, Ruiz, body cam supplement, Mercer, coaching, Whitaker, maintenance logs. A corner note. Keep it simple. Cameras will be here. Tell the truth so a fifth grader can track it. Leah texted Teresa, "You at work?" and got back a selfie under the Harper's sign. "I'm on break. TV's on. Coffee's intact. Tell the truth, mija." A gentle knock. Officer Dana Ruiz stepped in with counsel. She looked like the day after a fever breaks. Sweaty, lighter, a little raw. "My mother said, if it's going to cost you, let it cost you for the right thing. This is the right thing." Across town, the wrong thing poured mimosas at a fundraiser. Grant Whitaker's hilltop home, Circle Drive with a money-talking fountain. Banner, "Keep Franklin safe." Keating, 2024. Donors air-kissed. Chase lurked pale near the kitchen, thumb scrolling like it held a cure. "We have your maintenance logs. See you in court." Fear cracked his tone for the first time since the diner. 11:04. Judge Whitmore took the bench in a courtroom never so full of cameras. "We are convened on the defense's emergency motion for an evidentiary hearing. Counsel, call your first witness." Ellison buttoned his jacket and carried a folder like an offering. Defense calls General Nathaniel H. Pierce, United States Marine Corps, retired. Pierce walked to the stand, briefcase down with a soft thud, right hand raised. A yes that sounded practiced since birth. Ellison kept it simple. "Vietnam. I did. Ambush March 73, Cambodian border. We did. Marine sniper on the ridge? He was. Who? Corporal Marcus Hale." Documents slid forward. Exhibit 1, After Action Report, declassified. Exhibit 2, Medal of Honor Recommendation Original. Exhibit 3, Department Memorandum discouraging the award based on race. Keating, objection, relevance. Whitmore, overruled. I'll see it. The memo hit the projector, uglier in 24-point font. Gasps popped across the gallery like corn. "General, did this memorandum impact whether Corporal Hale received the Medal of Honor?" "It did," Pierce said. "His CO died 3 weeks after the action. The paperwork lost its advocate. This memo ensured it lost its home." "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "I failed," Director Pierce said, unblinking. "I climbed ladders while this man was being buried. That's on me. I'm here to do the part I can while I still wake up in the morning." Keating tried to pivot. "Even if we accept your recollection, this has nothing to do with Harper's Diner. Veterans can be—" "Objection," Ellison said. "Sustained," Whitmore snapped, rubbing his temple. Ellison pivoted the room. Defense calls Officer Dana Ruiz. Sworn in, seated. Activated body camera? Yes. Did it capture Mr. Hale standing before ordered? No. Any threats? No. He said, I'm not looking for trouble. Folks are trying to eat breakfast. Keating. Are you changing your testimony? Ruiz. I'm correcting it. Sergeant Kincaid wrote it first. I didn't argue. That was wrong. Pressured. He made it clear we were on the same page. I didn't want to be off the page. Or off the shift. Exhibit 4, Ruiz's supplement. Exhibit 5, the 12-second clip no jury got to see. A man seated, hands open, fingers splayed. Teresa behind the counter, Kincaid's shoulder-blocking frame as cuffs reached in. Keating. The state had no obligation to present every second. Whitmore's voice turned sandpaper. If the state withholds material that makes its theory worse, we have a problem. Do not test me on Brady this morning. Evan Mercer next, eyes raw, knuckles chewed. Why are you here? Because I lied, Evan said. Because Mr. Hale didn't threaten us. He asked us to keep it down. Chase told us to stick to the story or his dad would handle it. My cousin Landon wrote the 911 words, terrified, trained, weapon, disappear. He looked at Marcus for the first time. I did believe no one would believe him over us. I'm sorry. Whitaker security work order became Exhibit 6, front door camera offline for maintenance, stamped the night before, a signature sloping like a man writing in a moving car. Keating ran to the microphones during recess, selling contrition wrapped in caution. We were misled by teenagers. We'll review new evidence. Leah snorted at her phone. Pierce, soft beside her. They weren't misled, they were led. Whitmore returned with a face that had made up its mind. He lifted his gavel and set it down without striking. I have heard enough, he said. Material evidence favorable to the defense was withheld. Perjured testimony formed a substantial part of the state's case. The conviction is vacated. Mr. Hale is ordered released immediately. The words landed like a sunrise you didn't think you'd get to see. Alicia made a sound Leah had only heard in emergency rooms when knees give. She didn't fall, she ran. Veterans stood, canes tapped benches. Teresa, watching from Harper's, set a coffee in front of an empty stool and wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. It took 2 hours to chew through paper. Bureaucracy moves faster when it's embarrassed. When the last gate spat him out, Marcus stepped onto the pavement in khaki issue that fit no one, and the air hit his face like a benediction. He found Alicia by the second heartbeat. The hug changed the posture of the day. Leah kept her camera down and cried, because sometimes you put the phone away and watch with your eyes. Pierce waited one step off, hands clasped, briefcase still cuffed as if it needed a bodyguard. He snapped to attention and saluted a man older by months, younger by luck. Corporal Hale? General. Marcus returned the salute, then offered the one that matters. You brought sunlight. You brought the dawn, Pierce said. Ellison cleared his throat, practical as ever. Press line is forming, say a sentence, then we go. Alicia, stay close. Miss Park, one question if you behave. Leah, I'll behave. Marcus stepped to the line without stepping on it. Mr. Hale, how do you feel? Rate medium. Grateful, he said, letting it hang. Grateful my daughter didn't let go. Grateful men and women I never met decided the truth was their business. Grateful to a man who kept a promise he made to himself too late, but still kept. And I'm angry. Not the way they said, the way a citizen should be when paper gets used like a weapon. What do you say to the teens? Tell the truth now, then learn what it costs before you spend it like that again. Leah, what do you want next? Coffee that doesn't taste like a dare, my ring back, a nap. Then I want to meet some men who didn't get cameras today and deserve them. By dinner, the cascade began. Inspector General announced review. The AG's office said, under color of law, out loud. Fundraiser emptied like a tub. Donors ghosted. Landon posted a note about miscommunication and turned off comments. Kincaid, administrative leave, badge and gun surrendered in a hallway that looked different an hour before. He stared at his hands like he'd never explain his own palms to himself again. At Harper's, Teresa put out a slice of apple pie on the house and smiled at the empty doorway, practicing joy for the next person who'd walk through. A paper sign on the coffee maker in block letters, "Welcome home, Mr. Hale." Evan's mom sat 2 stools down, hands around a cup she didn't drink, phone buzzing without mercy. Teresa refilled her water without asking the question she already knew. How do you forgive a kid who broke something you love? With practice, with distance, with honesty that hurts right. Night fell like a curtain that didn't quite meet in the middle. Pierce stayed downtown. Bed too plush for a man who'd learned to sleep on gravel. He wrote the first paragraph of an affidavit, then called his wife. It went, he said softly. It went the right way. I saw, she said. You stood straighter than the flag behind you. He chuckled. The flag doesn't have my knees. Come home when you can. Bring that man if he wants to see our garden. I will. Leah filed 2 stories. Clean for the paper, raw for the subscribers who know truth has texture. A line she hadn't expected. Tomorrow, what a memo can and can't fix. She turned off the light and fell asleep fully clothed, like the old beat days. Alicia made dinner in her tiny kitchen, rice, chicken, a salad that tried its best, and watched her dad fall asleep in the recliner with his shoes still on, mouth open a little, like when she was 8 and painted his nails, and he didn't flinch at the tickle. She covered him with a blanket, set the ring on his palm, and curled onto the couch. She didn't set an alarm. Some mornings you let the sun do the job. On C2, Darius laid out the day's news like tarot for men who only had radio. He's out, he said, and the tear exhaled. Tyrell wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. Omari mouthed a prayer he'd learned before he knew how to spell it. C.O. Hobbs walked by and didn't knock any books off any ledges. Grant Whitaker stood at a window that framed city lights like a dare and realized he had never believed he could lose. Chase sat on the sofa, phone dark, saying nothing at all. 2 neighborhoods away, Nolan's mother cried into a dish towel and didn't know whether to call her lawyer or her pastor first. Evan slept 12 hours without dreaming. For the first time since he was small, the thump of blades had faded. The way storms pass and leave silence that feels earned. But the shadow it cast stayed. Over a courthouse, over a family, over a city tired of being tired. Tomorrow would bring forms, briefings, hearings, and 1,000 small fights that make up the big one. Tonight, a man who had been turned into a number became a name again, in a room where love outnumbered fear. And somewhere on Broad Street, a scuff left by a skid on the lawn marked the spot where a helicopter sat down long enough to drop off a truth the city could no longer pretend not to hear. The news cycle never slept. By sunrise the next morning, every channel from Columbus to D.C. ran footage of Marcus stepping into daylight, hand in hand with his daughter. The headlines changed tone so fast they almost blurred. Yesterday's dangerous veteran threatens teens became war hero vindicated after racist cover-up. The city looked in the mirror and saw what it had been pretending not to see. Inside the courthouse, though, the air hadn't caught up. Benches smelled of varnish, sweat, and cheap coffee. Marble floors echoed with the shuffle of shoes that didn't want to be heard. Whitmore's courtroom filled again, reporters and cameras shoulder to shoulder, everyone pretending this was a continuation of yesterday's hearing and not something brand new. Marcus sat at the defense table in the same pressed shirt Alicia had ironed that morning, sleeves a touch too short after the laundry shrink, posture calm but alert. Beside him, Ellison shuffled files that now looked like weapons instead of shields. Across the aisle, Keating was all business. Hair pinned back, jaw set, mouth a straight line. She hadn't announced her resignation, and her perfume couldn't cover the scent of fear around her. Whitmore banged his gavel once. "We'll hear remaining testimony for the record," he said, voice thinner than before. "Mr. Ellison, you may proceed." Ellison rose. Defense recalls General Nathaniel Pierce. Pierce took the stand again, unhurried, metal ribbons muted under courtroom lights. "Sir," Ellison said, "yesterday you testified that Corporal Hale saved 38 American soldiers in Vietnam. For the record, would you read the line from the Medal of Honor recommendation regarding his conduct?" Pierce adjusted his glasses. "Corporal Hale exposed himself to sustained enemy fire, neutralizing 9 machine gun nests and 3 mortar teams. His precision fire broke the encirclement, allowing evacuation of the wounded and preventing the annihilation of the unit." "And that action was confirmed by multiple witness statements?" "It was. Every man who lived signed a statement, including me. Your Honor, Exhibits 7 through 11, witness statements kept classified for 50 years. Pierce turned slightly to the gallery. "That's the part people forget. We bury paperwork faster than we bury soldiers." Ellison moved next. Defense calls Officer Dana Ruiz. Continuation. Ruiz walked like a soldier to the gallows and stood taller than yesterday. "Officer, after your testimony, did Sergeant Kincaid contact you?" "Yes, sir, twice. He left a voicemail." "Describe it." "He said, 'You think those cameras will protect you? I built the report. You just rode in it.' Did you take that as a threat?" "I took it as a confession." Exhibit 12, voicemail transcript, entered. Keating didn't object. She drew small circles in a legal pad like a person marking time. Defense calls Mr. Evan Mercer. Evan came through a side door, shoulders squared, eyes darting. The boy who had started it all looked smaller now, like the lie had eaten half of him. "Mr. Mercer, do you stand by yesterday's recantation?" "Yes, sir." "Tell the court how those statements came to be." "Chase said we'd get in trouble for being drunk in public unless we flipped it. His dad had connections. We were told to say the man was scary, moved like a sniper. A cousin in PR rehearsed the 911 call and gave us the words that hit hardest." "Did you believe him?" "I did, until the cuffs went on Mr. Hale. Then I couldn't breathe right for a year and a half." "Why come forward now?" "Because I saw the helicopter land. Someone risked everything to tell the truth, and I was pretending I didn't have to." Keating tried to recenter. "Promised immunity?" "No, ma'am, I'll probably be charged." I said okay. "So, remorse?" "Correction," Evan said. Ellison's last witness, Leah Park. Chain of custody unfurled. FOIA requests, missing footage, Teresa's maintenance logs, the anonymous email, the VA canteen meet. Every hand the documents pass through, named. "Did anyone ask you to withhold or alter material?" "No, if anything, they tried to bury it again." "No further witnesses, Your Honor. We request the full record be entered to state and federal registries for oversight." Whitmore, older than a day ago. "Granted." "Ms. Keating?" Keating rose, stared at the flag. "The state acknowledges errors were made. We were misled by witnesses, misinformed by officers, and perhaps too eager to believe the narrative." Pierce, barely above a breath. "You were eager because it fit your campaign slogan." Keating pressed on. "Nonetheless, we acted in good faith with the information available." Ellison's chair creaked. "Good faith doesn't erase bad facts." Whitmore tapped the gavel once. "Enough, the record speaks." For a heartbeat, the room hung between decades. The old war and the new one, both fought with paper and power instead of bullets. "Mr. Hale," the judge said at last, "you are free to go. The court expresses its regret." "Regret?" Marcus repeated, testing the sound. "Regret's a start." Outside, the noise hit first. Thousands chanting his name. Flags flapping, cameras flashing like delayed lightning. Veterans lined the steps, saluting in a silence louder than the crowd. Wind lifted the corner of his shirt where his museum badge used to clip. Alicia reached him, breathless. "You did it." "We did." Pierce appeared, the briefcase finally uncuffed. "Corporal, you got somewhere to be tomorrow?" "Depends. Where's tomorrow?" "Washington. The Pentagon wants to fix 50 years of paperwork." Leah whispered to the wind. "Sometimes the story writes itself." "No," Marcus said. "It just stops fighting the truth." That evening, every network looped every frame. The memo glowing on the projector, Ruiz's steady voice, Evan's confession, the judge's reluctant apology, Marcus walking free. But the image that stayed was Leah's shot at the bottom step. Pierce saluting, Alicia crying, Marcus raising a small, unshowy hand. Acknowledgement over triumph. Caption, Justice Declassified. With an hour's fallout, Sergeant Brian Kincaid, suspended pending federal review. The governor called for investigation of systemic misconduct. Grant Whitaker hired criminal counsel and took indefinite leave. Chase deleted socials and released, "I was young and I was wrong." At City Hall, Keating's banners came down. By dawn, she resigned to focus on family. By noon, the bar opened an ethics inquiry. The Attorney General filed notices: perjury, false reporting, civil rights violations under color of law, naming Kincaid, Holbrook, and the three boys. Final line, "Justice delayed must not be justice denied." Pierce stood with Marcus on the courthouse lawn as the words spread across screens. "It's not enough," the general said. "It's a beginning," Marcus replied. Around them, the crowd thinned back into teachers, janitors, veterans, kids on lunch break, each walking away with a piece of the story folded in a pocket. Leah filed her last update of the day. Headline not loud, just true. The system blinked. Back at Alicia's apartment, spaghetti sauce, lemon cleaner, paperwork stacked neat. On top, a manila folder, civil action draft. "What do you even ask for?" Alicia stirred a finished sauce. "Not money," Marcus said. "Structure." "Structure?" "Rules that don't fold in the wind." He closed the folder, looked out at streets rinsed with rain. Ohio never did like a clean sky. Across town, Pierce met Leah and Ellison at a local station. One more interview, recorded for history. The producer asked for a soundbite. The general gave a sermon. Racism in a memo is still a bullet when it hits the right life. It may not kill fast, but it kills all the same. When the tape stopped, nobody spoke. That night, Leah walked home under a sky-washed silver. Her inbox pinged. Veterans, widows, kids who wanted to study law because of what they'd seen. A senior from Dayton. "How do you know when to keep digging?" Leah typed back, "When the people you write about stop having a voice, that's when you borrow yours." 2 a.m. Marcus woke from a dream. Not the jungle, not the diner. The ridge. Same ridge, new sky. Pierce, young again, shouting coordinates over static. The chopper lifting them out wore words he could finally read. Truth incoming. He smiled, turned over, went back to sleep. Morning papers tried a new phrase. The Hale precedent. Law professors dissected. Pundits chewed. In the midst of all that noise, Teresa flipped the open sign at Harper's and served coffee to two truckers who didn't know her name. Between the sugar jars sat a small plaque, Seat of Quiet Courage. A reporter asked why she paid for it herself. Teresa smiled, "Because some truths you don't wait for somebody else to honor." That afternoon, Pierce's helicopter lifted off again. Blades beating the same patient rhythm. Leah filmed from the courthouse roof. The general saluted from the window. Marcus stood below, a speck of steady in a city learning to look itself in the eye. The shadow skimmed over the crowd, the courthouse, the diner, the jail, then kept going east toward Washington, toward another fight waiting on paper in a cabinet marked pending review. And for the first time in a long time, the sound didn't feel like war. It sounded like a country trying. Morning came soft and gray, an Ohio morning stuck between seasons. Marcus woke before the alarm, as usual. No bars on the windows, no metal clank of a door slot. He made coffee in Alicia's tiny kitchen and stood by the window while the kettle sang, letting steam fog the glass. Below, the street unspooled into a damp hush. Bus brakes, a trash truck, and the distant thump of a bass from a car that hadn't learned the neighborhood's sleep schedule yet. Alicia drifted out in scrubs and an oversized sweatshirt. Mount Carmel East. She rubbed her eyes like a kid. "You didn't sleep, did you?" "Couple hours," he said, pouring coffee for both of them. "Enough to prove I can." "You've always been stubborn." She smiled, then sobered as her phone buzzed. Another morning show. She flipped it face down. "We don't owe anyone our first cup." He pulled out a chair. They sat, silence full of everything they'd survived. "What happens today?" she asked. "Ellison says the city wants a meeting by noon," Marcus answered. "Pierce calls at 9 about D.C., and Leah wants the timeline clean before she files her long read." "Famous, huh?" Alicia said, relief and wary gratitude, no glee. "Whatever we decide about compensation, promise me something." "What's that?" "We don't sell the apology part for a check." He rolled the word apology like a marble in a tin cup. "That's the only part I can't price." By 10, City Hall smelled like printer toner and nerves. A glass conference room, modern chairs that looked too light for history. The city attorney, tired eyes, calm voice, slid a packet across the table. "Mr. Hale, Ms. Hale, Mr. Ellison, we're here in good faith." "Good faith is new," Ellison said. Factual, not combative. She nodded like she'd practiced it. "We're prepared to discuss settlement for wrongful conviction and incarceration, monetary relief and structural reforms. What would actually matter to you?" Marcus tapped the packet. "Body cam audits, independent, not another binder nobody reads. Third-party chain of custody for footage that becomes evidence. Witness protection protocols that don't get people hurt for telling the truth. Immigration neutral affidavits, language access. Teresa should never have to worry whether honesty costs her a life here." The deputy safety director wrote fast, pen digging like a plow. "Body cam uptime audits, quarterly. Independent oversight board, public defenders, veteran advocates, 2 citizen seats. Chain of custody contractor, no city ties to any arresting agency. Witness protections, a funded line item, not a grant, in writing by week's end." "And Sergeant Kincaid?" Alicia asked. "Separate HR action, AG pursuing federal charges. We're cooperating." Ellison slid a sheet forward. "One more, the Hale Clause. If the state invokes military service for lethality or capacity, juries must receive balancing instruction about honorable service and non-correlation with violence. Talk training, then talk character and outcomes." The city attorney looked at Marcus. "That one changes courtrooms. We'll endorse it at the state level. Might get us yelled at. Worth it." They took a break, everyone pretending to check email. Alicia and her dad faced the river. "I like this version of the day," she said. "Feels like the country took a shower," he answered. By lunch, the framework was set. $16.3 million in damages and fees. A consent decree with reforms. A public apology in plain language. And the city's new evidence integrity program named for a man the system tried to grind into dust. Marcus asked for something smaller too. A plaque at Harper's Diner that read, "Seat of Quiet Courage." The city attorney smiled. "Already approved." Calls didn't stop. Reporters, veterans groups, old Marines with voices like gravel and sunshine. A 202 number flashed. "Mr. Hale, this is Ruth Anders, Office of the President. We'd like to invite you to the White House next month." "For what?" to correct something that should have been corrected in 1973. We'll be in touch with logistics. Also, congratulations on reminding this country what grown-up courage looks like. He hung up. Alicia stared, mouth open. He lifted his cup in a tiny toast. Tomorrow's Washington. Weeks moved like a river finally finding downhill. Consequences clicked in like gears. Kincaid, terminated and indicted. Civil rights violations, falsifying reports, tampering with evidence. Holbrook, the PR cousin, copped a plea and cooperated. Grant Whitaker, obstruction and finance charges. Contracts gone. Clients rediscovering ethics. Keating withdrew to recenter values. The bar recommended disbarment in 6 weeks. Evan Mercer pled to perjury, reduced sentence, community service, restitution, public apology. "Mr. Hale," he said, hands shaking, "I lied because I was afraid. I'm standing here because you refused to be." Nolan took a similar deal. Chase wanted to fight, then took 18 months. In the hallway, he passed Marcus and flinched like a mirror had moved. Marcus didn't speak. Some lessons grow only in silence. At Harper's, Teresa brought her grandson on Saturday and wiped a smudge from the new plaque. "You see that, mijo? We don't whisper about courage. We set it on the counter where people can spill coffee on it and still see it." The bell dinged. Darius, clean buttoned down, held a GED certificate like a passport. He hugged Marcus with one arm, handed Teresa a card with the other. "I'm not fancy," he said, a little embarrassed. "But thanks for believing I'd be more than a doc number." "You're not fancy," Marcus smiled. "You're free." "Interview at the warehouse on Alum Creek, night shift. I'll read in the mornings like you said." "Bring coffee," Teresa said, sliding pancakes across. "Reading burns calories." Leah's long feature dropped Sunday night. 7,000 words, a lifetime of receipts. The Hale Files, how a memo tried to erase a medal and a city almost erased a man. No flowers, just facts. She laid the paper trail beside the human trail until they matched, then lit the match. By morning, 1,000,000 reads. Comments from names misspelled on headstones, from spouses sleeping on vinyl chairs, from kids learning what it means to keep receipts. The White House invitation turned real. The city didn't make it about itself. A small send-off at the museum where Marcus had mopped floors at night. The director cried, laughed, and then cried again. Mr. Hale kept this place safe. Now the country gets to do the same for him, finally. The Rose Garden glowed warmer than TV. The president stood with a folder he treated like skin. Members of the 73 Patrol sat front row, old men, soft hands, faces crumpling into relief. General Pierce stood off to the side, eyes fixed on Marcus like a compass pointing home. Corporal Marcus Hale represents the best of us, the president said. In a jungle we tried to forget, he remembered his duty. In a courtroom that tried to make him small, he refused to shrink. Valor doesn't expire. Neither does our obligation to admit when we were wrong. He lifted the sky blue ribbon and star, heavy as a lifetime, placed it around Marcus's neck, cool at first, then warm, waiting on a body, a quiet lean, not for show. Thank you for holding the line. Marcus stepped to the mic with no notes, only a life. I did my job, a lot of folks did theirs. The country had a job too, and for a long time it didn't clock in. Today it showed up. I'm not a symbol, I'm a neighbor who takes the trash out on Tuesdays. If this medal is anything, it's a promise that the truth doesn't have to shout to be heard. He found Pierce. General, debt settled, debts kept. Next day, Capitol Hill. A hearing rarer than outrage. Listening. Veterans and bias in charging decisions. Public defenders named the price of an expert down to the penny. Prosecutors admitted fear had walked them into bad logic. Veterans testified, not for pity, but for policy. Leah went first. How incentives warp journalism. We chased the story that Screams. We must rewire the rewards. Alicia followed. It's not just the person charged, it's the family. Give defenders the budgets you give prosecutors. Let service be context, not a cudgel. Marcus closed. Don't relitigate, renovate. Balance instructions when you mention service. Fund third-party camera audits. Protect witnesses without passports. And when a memo says a Negro enlisted shouldn't get a medal, don't bury it. Teach it so kids see how words become walls. By month's end, the Veterans Justice and Evidence Integrity Act had sponsors from both parties, balancing instructions, independent audits, grants for military culture experts, whistleblower channels for intimidation tied to immigration. When the House passed it, Leah wrote short with a long memory. The country didn't turn on a dime, it turned on a document. Back home, the museum rehired Marcus, this time as guest curator. Exhibit, Quiet Storm, Hidden Service in American Wars. A corridor of glass cases, low speakers, radio static, letters home, after-action reports almost airbrushed from history. Plaques in plain language. Bravery doesn't ask for credit, it asks for witnesses. A memo can be a bullet. Paper can wound. Opening night, 3 high schools wandered, whispering the way kids whisper when something matters. Darius wore a small badge, docent. Sir, were you in the story? A teen asked. Everyone's in the story, Darius said. Some of us just get our names back sooner. A quiet Sunday, Greenlawn Cemetery. Coins of sunlight across the grass. Marcus knelt at Evelyn's stone, brushed away a leaf, and set flowers down. We made it, Evie. Took 50 years and a helicopter. You'd have hated the cameras. He smiled, hearing her remind him to sit up straight, be kind to the nervous. You were right about the country. It's slow, but it can be taught. When they stood, Alicia slipped her hand into his. You okay? Yeah. Let's go feed people. The Hale Trust launched, seated with most of the settlement he hadn't let the city talk him out of. Mission, legal defense for wrongfully accused veterans, literacy pods inside prisons, micro-grants for witnesses who risk truth. Office, a small space over a barber shop on Parsons Avenue. A sign in the window, we believe you before the press release. Leah donated her wall of string and pins. Pierce sent a framed copy of the memo with a handwritten note. Paper burned, lessons kept. Friday mail, a thick envelope, Savannah, Georgia. Careful block letters. Dear Mr. Hale, I'm Staff Sergeant Reggie Chandler, U.S. Air Force. Responding officers tased me when I reached for my wallet, charged with resisting and obstruction. My CO says take a plea. I can't. I watched your hearing in the base library. If there's a way to keep my name, I want to try. Marcus read it twice, handed it to Alicia and Leah. We'll call him Monday, he said. No, Leah said. We'll call him now. An hour later, preliminary plan, local council to file preservation for body cam, public records request for dispatch logs, a base legal contact who owed Ellison a favor. Darius poked his head in. I can run copies, and coffee. That's the budget we need, Alicia grinned. Copies and coffee. Just before lockup, Leah's laptop pinged. Unknown.mil address. Subject, D-Class Q4 1972, Laos border. Angel's Ladder. Body. You don't know me. My father was saved by a Marine whose name didn't make it out of the jungle. I think I found the file. An attachment blinked. Leah looked up. You ready for another ridge? Marcus smiled, steady, not triumphant. Ridges are where the view's honest. They flipped the lights, stepped into the hall, and listened to a building that worked for a living. Barber clippers, old soul radio, footsteps that didn't hurry, no one running from anything anymore. Down on the street, a kid on a bike shouted, Yo, that's the guy from the news! Marcus laughed, the sound of someone recognizing himself again. Come on, he said to Alicia and Leah, heading for the stairs. We got letters to answer. On the stairwell wall, a small print hung crooked. Alicia straightened it without thinking. A memo tried to erase a medal. A courtroom tried to erase a man. The country didn't change in a day, but it changed because one man refused to confess to a lie and one general refused to forget a debt. Outside, evening stretched streetlights into thin halos. The city breathed. Somewhere a helicopter thumped across the sky, just a dot carrying a shadow. This time, no one ducked. This time it sounded less like war, more like a promise keeping its appointment. In the end, it wasn't the courtroom that cleared his name. It was the truth that refused to stay buried. A medal lost to history found its way home. And a man the world called guilty stood taller than every lie ever told about him. If this story moved you, if you believe courage still matters, share it, speak it, and let someone else know that justice can still find its way back. Because stories like this don't just honor one man, they remind all of us what this country can be when we choose truth over silence. Thank you for watching and for keeping that choice alive.